Today we're going to talk about the main lesson Democrats can take from the passage of Trump's big, beautiful bill. And I've got two interviews. I speak with Congressman Jamie Rascin about what made the conservative holdouts fold, and Pod Save America's Tommy Vitor about the consequences for Republicans. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen, and you're watching No Lie. This whole episode with the big, beautiful bill these last few months has made me think about power, how the Democrats often refuse to wield it, and how the Republicans often refuse to limit their abuse of it. When Democrats had full control of government back in 2021, we had our own BBB, the Build Back Better Act, that we tried to pass with a similar razor-thin majority. It had all the big Democratic priorities: climate funding, childcare, universal preschool, child tax credit, paid family leave, Medicare expansion, ACA subsidies, caps to out-of-pocket healthcare costs, and it was all paid for by imposing a 5% tax on individual earners who were making over $10 million and an additional 3% tax on those with incomes over $25 million, along with a 15% minimum corporate tax on businesses that had profits over $1 billion. This was a grab bag of pie-in-the-sky Democratic priorities. But ultimately, we couldn't get Joe Manchin on board, and the bill stalled in the Senate, and it ultimately died. And along with it, Democrats' hopes of ushering through some massive legislative reform. Cut to present day, the Republicans introduced their own BBB, the Big Beautiful Bill. It was basically a foil to the Democratic BBB, and this was a grab bag of Republican priorities. They cut healthcare for 17 million Americans, food assistance from 3 million Americans, eliminate school meal access for 18 million kids, substantially raised healthcare premiums for seniors with ACA coverage. They'll send energy costs soaring, and they added nearly $4 trillion to the debt, all to pay for a tax cut for millionaires and billionaires, and fund ICE to such a degree that if it was a military, it would be the 16th best funded military on earth. More than Israel, Italy, and Brazil. Republicans, too, had razor-thin majorities like when the Democrats had in 2021, but despite the fact that you have Freedom Caucus members whose entire identity is predicated on reducing the deficit, they voted for it. Despite the fact that you have frontline Republican members who are going to bear the electoral brunt of this aggressively unpopular bill in their House races, they voted for it. And despite the fact that you have members who represent districts with insanely high proportions of constituents on Medicaid that will be decimated by this bill's cuts, they voted for it. Sure, there are a few defections, there always are, but they always manage to get enough votes to pass the bill, even if it's by a single vote. The point is that even with majorities and legislation that is popular, the Democrats always seem to be a vote away from getting it done. And yet the Republicans have legislation that quite literally could not be less popular. One poll, KFF, put this bill at net negative 29% support, and they always manage to get it passed. The unfortunate truth is that Republicans are much better at wielding power than the Democrats. The even more unfortunate truth is that the Republicans will also abuse that power, refuse to accept any limits to that power, and even see their power as completely unchecked and total. The reality is that if we want to be able to compete against modern-day Republicans, we have to be able to fight like them, because this is who our opposition is. And look, insofar as I have any influence at all, my entire goal for the next 15 months is to support Democrats who can fight. And they'll be on both ends of the ideological spectrum, because the often inconvenient reality is that part of being in a big tent party is that we have to accept that it is a big tent. AOC is not going to win in Jared Golden's district, and he's not going to win in hers. And that's okay. Not everything has to be a purity test. Not everything has to be an intra-party feud. Not everything has to devolve into progressive versus centrist. If we get to the point where, God willing, we can debate Medicare for all again, then let's have that fight. But right now, we should be focused solely on defeating Republicans, the party that just took healthcare away from 17 million Americans. Frankly, I legitimately do not care which ends of the ideological spectrum you fall on. If you can fight back against these people, if you can use every lever at your disposal, if you can use your voice and rally thousands or tens of thousands of people, then I'll support you. I want AOC and Bernie tapping into the energy of the electorate. I want Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez and Jared Golden stealing seats away from Republicans in deeply red districts. That's not our weakness. That's our strength. It'll take a little bit more tolerance on our side to make it happen, but we have to make it happen, because the alternative, the other party, is a political party that has no long-standing principles other than a relentless, rabid pursuit of power, and worse, they understand that politics is a game of addition, not subtraction. That's where we need to get, and fast, because what they're doing with their power is killing people, killing this country, and killing our future. The pendulum is going to swing back. You're going to see that in Virginia and New Jersey this upcoming November, and then in midterms in 2026. Our job is to make sure that A, it swings back as far as humanly possible, and B, that when it does, we are prepared to take full advantage, that we're prepared to fight, and that we are prepared to wield power effectively enough that voters actually see the virtue in giving Democrats power again. I'm so sorry to have to drag you into the usual bullshit that Donald Trump mires himself in, but I'm going to put the post from Truth Social on the screen. Representative Jamie Rascin, a third-rate Democrat politician, has no idea what is in our fantastic tax cut bill, nor would he understand it if he did. This dope has been consistently losing to me for years, and I love watching his ugly face as he is forced to consistently concede defeat to Trump, and tonight should be another of those nights. Rascin is a bad politician and a total loser. Congressman, your reaction to that screed?
Well, first of all, what set him off, Brian, was that I said he clearly didn't know what was in his own bill. And the reason I said that was because when the Republicans went over to the White House, he lectured them on how they should never touch Medicaid or Medicare. And there were Republicans in the audience who had to say to him, Mr. President, you understand that we're slashing nearly $1 trillion from Medicaid, right? And so I said, not in any kind of accusatory way, but just as a matter of fact, that he doesn't know what's in the bill, and yet all the Republicans are following him. So who's actually calling the shots here? And that's apparently what set him off. Is some of the parts of that are truly comedic. I mean, when he calls me a loser, first of all, I hate to bring it up, but I've never lost an election. He lost the popular vote in 2 presidential elections. He's the only president who's ever been in that situation. And he was so incensed about losing the election to Joe Biden in 2020 by more than 7 million votes that he incited a violent insurrection against the Congress and the Constitution and his own vice president, Mike Pence, if you remember him. I mean, that's what a loser does, right? That's what a sore loser does. It didn't make me happy that he called me ugly, but I guess that puts me in the same company as Zorn Mondani and Bruce Springsteen and about 50 beautiful actresses who he hates. But he doesn't understand that, first of all, grown-ups really don't call other people ugly based on their appearances. His big, beautiful bill is terribly ugly, and I think he's upset that people have been calling it ugly all week. And it's ugly because it's stealing 17 million people's health insurance right out from beneath them and attacking the lunch money, the nutritional benefits of tens of millions of Americans. That's truly ugly. That's what we've got to be focused on here.
Already, we have seen, even before the passage of this bill, for example, one community healthcare center in southwest Nebraska shut down. The CEO of that community hospital, came out and said, unfortunately, the current financial environment, driven by anticipated federal budget cuts to Medicaid, has made it impossible for us to continue operating all of our services. And so we're already seeing an instance where one hospital is shutting down just in anticipation of this bill. And so in terms of the broader consequences, is this a situation where you think that Republicans are going to be able to skate by in very much the same way that they've been able to skate by with unpopular legislation in the past because of how quickly the news cycle is, because of how they can obfuscate the reality surrounding it? Or do you think it's going to be impossible for them to escape the reality of this thing?
I mean, I think it's our job to make sure they cannot. I mean, I was pretty frustrated yesterday to see how much the cable news channels were focused on the Diddy trial and then this murder case in Idaho. There was not a ton of coverage of the big, beautiful bill going through Congress yesterday. And so that's where I think independent media outlets like you and like us over at Pod Save America are going to be critical. And also just the Democratic Party, talking about this every single day until the midterm elections. Because to your point, I mean, that example you just raised, the Kaiser Family Foundation did a bunch of polling on the bill, and support for it dropped to 21% when voters were informed that it could decrease funding for local hospitals and lead to them shutting down. So if people hear that story, this is politically devastating. And that could get us beyond just sort of the 35 core targets that DCCC currently has. Yeah. Hopefully we can expand that.
Do you think that we're in a political environment where we do have short attention spans and we do have short memories. I mean, I was thinking yesterday about the fact that when Roe was overturned, it felt like such a massive blow, and it was, but where the next presidential cycle saw Republicans gain full control of government.
Right.
And this is an immediate environment where not only are there not major consequences, but you can actually get rewarded for doing the worst, most depraved things. And that's what we're seeing right now. And so do you think that we are too far away? And I know we have agency in this, but is there some concern that we're far away? We have over a year until the next election. And while this might be very much in the zeitgeist right now, that they can kind of escape by virtue of the amount of time that's going to pass.
Yeah, look, I do worry a lot about that. I mean, you never know what can happen. There could be some sort of exigent event, sort of a terrorist attack.
Right. I mean, look, in January of 2020, nobody
Right.
thought that 60 days from then we would be in the midst of a global pandemic.
Exactly.
So you never know what's going to happen.
Exactly. You never know what's going to happen. Donald Trump always likes to fabricate like the latest caravan full of, MS-13 guys who have Ebola or whatever right around an election. So they're going to try to change the subject to what they want. It's just incumbent on us to remind people what a piece of shit this bill is, right? Like $6 trillion in debt, according to the conservative Cato Foundation.
Yeah. Massive
Tax cuts for the richest people in the country, throwing 12 million people off of Medicaid. I mean, this is like a cataclysmic event politically. It's going to harm real people. People are going to die. Like 50,000 people a year are going to die because of this bill. And we need to be the ones who tell those stories. Republicans will lie and spin, and Trump will say, oh, no, I said no Medicaid cuts, and there's none in this bill. And just people are completely full of shit. We need to correct that.
To watch the full interviews with Jamie Raskin and Tommy Vitor, click the thumbnails right here on the screen or check out the interviews playlist on my YouTube channel. You can also click the link on the screen to listen to the audio version of this episode, and of course to see more of my content, the subscribe button's on the screen as well.